Okay, for people joining us on the live stream, this is a meeting about incremental enhancements to Wolfram Language with, looks like, 4 topics today. So let's start off with the first topic. Word-related functions, unknown word versus no data.
Yes, so the idea here, this is motivated by the function synonyms and antonyms that we discussed last week.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, how do we distinguish the fact that we don't recognize a given word from the fact that we do recognize that word, but we don't have data for that word?
So word definition of foo, missing, not available, seems quite reasonable. Missing, not available. So what's the issue here? So,
well, the issue is for a case like antonyms, you could say, what are the antonyms of red? There aren't any applicable antonyms because...
So it's a null list.
Yeah. So right now the design we have is that if it's a recognized word, but there's no applicable antonyms, we give a null list. If you say, what are the antonyms of foo, it says, well, there's no data associated with that. So we say missing, not available. We don't recognize foo as a word and we have no data about it.
So I'm sorry, you are saying antonyms of foo, you say missing, not available.
Yes. And if you say antonyms of red, it gives a null list. And the question is whether that's an appropriate design, or because the tricky thing there is that the missing, there's 2 different kinds of missing. One is we have information about the word, but there's nothing applicable. There's no reasonable antonyms. There's no synonyms. And the other is we don't have information about the word.
Well, okay. So listen, this is probably wrong here. Mm-hmm. This should probably say missing unknown word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's the next section down past part of speech has what entity value does, which the default is unknown entities for inputs that are not a recognized word. I don't know if we want to say unknown entity for something like word definition.
I think we should say unknown word.
Unknown word.
That's what I think.
Right, because with word definition, it was a little more straightforward because if we have the word, we have a definition associated with it. But for synonyms and antonyms, we may have the word, but there just may not be anything applicable.
Well, that's okay. Then we should give a null list. I mean, if we know the word and we know that there aren't any, then just give a null list. That's fine, I think.
Okay.
What's the problem with that? I mean, is there a? I mean, okay. So if you say antonym of chair,
right? It would give a null list right now. So in the in the future as ref pages, that's what we currently have as the result in the case that
seems right to me. I think. And is there any?
That case is clear. The other case is the not available. That's the one we wanted to.
Yeah, I think that's wrong. I think it should be unknown word.
Okay.
Right. We have Alan here just for this discussion. Do you agree, Alan, with that?
That's fine. I mean, that's effectively what I was saying in my reply earlier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we all agree.
Good. Okay.
Okay. So
thanks, guys. Yep. Wait a minute. Alan should stick around, and I think it wouldn't be bad for Nick to stick around for a minute here as well.
Yep. I'll be here also.
Okay.
I think we have Francisco also to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay. We are in the subject of phone number, physical address, person name. Right. So we also have this notion of external reference, right? Which refers to, I mean, is that right, Alan? That's something like an orchid or something like that. ORCID.
Yes, it could be.
But that's what we were planning to call that as external reference, right? What's happened to
no, the last time we were working on this, it was external identifier.
You are right. I mean, it worries me a little bit that the word external has become sort of a brand for our external functions and things like that for okay, let me look at external reference here. We have some notes here. Right. Right. So this is plugging into other people's external identifiers. Actually, this is interesting in terms of my. I mean, what's happened with this stuff, by the way, Alan? This,
sidelined because of other things going on alpha side to not go back and finish it off.
Okay. Is it known? I'm just going to add it actually to one of my lists here.
Sure.
Is it known? Oh, I actually already had it. Fancy that. I mean, do we believe it's fairly easy? And whatever happened with our bibliographic styles business?
It's between Eric Weistein and Aaron, also, both of whom have not been working on that the last number of weeks.
Okay.
I think they were starting to compile a list of what we thought the canonical components of a bibliographic reference would be, and also setting up and figuring out some of the external services we might use to validate DOIs and other kinds of identifiers in the cases where we needed to do that.
Okay. So we were starting here to talk about personal names and so on. Actually, personnel name, I think, is a better term than person name. Okay, and this is what we had in mind for this stuff, exporting as a APA style citation, etc. You're going, like we didn't like.
No. That was a of agreement. Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's go back over here to talk about. Okay, so there's the phone number thing. Have we talked about phone numbers separately? And do we have Carlo? I think was the one who has actually built the phone number interpreter that we have today. Is that correct?
I think so. Interpreter, yes.
We don't have Carlo here, though.
Perhaps we should try to get him.
Okay, let me find him.
Well, here, Alex, let me send something. Okay. Let me see. So I'm just going here. Hold on 1 second to the external. You know what? I should rename this. I'm sorry. Excuse me a second. No. Okay. Let me go here. External reference. So do we believe that a phone number is an example of an external reference? We're not sure. It doesn't need to be. It's a different thing.
I wouldn't automatically think so.
Okay. So what we believe is that a phone number could either be, I would suspect that what we want to do is have, you start with something like this. And is the canonical form of a phone number then the thing broken into, area code, country code, 1, blah, 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 blah. What makes sense there? And then then what we have, dollar mobile number that I'm not about to type here, but dollar mobile number is dollar mobile phone gives a phone number, right? So that would then return one of these phone number objects. Correct?
Yeah, I would say if we have a
second.
I'm sorry?
I would expect that if we have a phone number head, something called mobile phone would return that, yeah.
Right. Okay. And so then also interpreter of phone number would return a phone number wrapper. Yes?
Yep.
Did we manage to get Carlo or not?
Carlo just replied to me. He'll join soon.
Okay. Well, while we're talking about that, let's let's talk about. Okay. So the next one is, I think, personal name, and the next one is physical address. I mean, maybe we should call that. Maybe it should be geo address, because we've got find geolocation, right? Find geolocation will take.
Sorry, Stephen. I missed a won't in the message that he sent. He can't join right now.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So that's an example of, so what we would want here is interpreter, so we have interpreter of location that return. What on earth is that? What on earth is that? Could you capture that, Sushma, and send that in?
yes.
And you should capture the other screens here, because this is related to the autocomplete problem. Wow. It's interesting.
Are you on prototype build?
I don't think so. I thought I was on a production build, but this is probably corruption from some prototype.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably corruption of some auto-completion try. What I'm guessing it is it's a corruption of my user learning auto-completion try based on something from a prototype build.
Okay.
Okay, so that is very bad that it keeps on doing that. That's really weird. Okay, well, let's see what happens now. Oh my gosh, every time I click, it's doing this. Humph. Well, let's try quitting the kernel, see whether that makes a difference, and restart. By the way, we've got a bunch of background noise, which will be lovely to get rid of here. Thank you. Okay, so, oh my gosh, it's back. That's the weirdest thing. Well, I'm going to restart. I don't want to be watching this error message every 5 seconds. Actually, before I restart, could you see if John is available?
John Fultz?
Yep, so I could just join this problem before, so we could try to debug it. Okay, meanwhile, okay, so we've got this notion of a geo address. What is the canonical representation of that? We started talking about that before. It's things like, city, zip code, etc. Now, what is it that we're going to use to break addresses apart into that? Do we have that technology? Francisco, can you comment on that, please?
Not really. So what we have, for example, with the applications we use, they have their own parser, and we could try to figure out from the output they have more information, like, for example, the city or some kind of information related to that. For example, I was just talking about how they parse, and they parse, for example, separately the country, the place, the avenue, or the way, let's say. Also, there can be other elements. For example, in rural zones, you don't have ways, but you have blocks. So you have different ways to have a exact address, let's say, besides the actual number or some extra specification like.
Yeah, right. Yeah, when I lived in Illinois, I had a lovely address that was outside of a town, and it was just actually it was very weird. It was a very weird address. Any case, okay. But so, do we care about breaking addresses into things like this?
I think it would be more useful if we can do it, but there should be a mode in which if we cannot do it, then we just leave the address there as this.
Like a full specification or full string, something like that. Yeah. So if we can
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So if we can fill all the other fields, for example, we don't have in Peru, for example, there was not zip code in all the country, only in Lima, for example, until a couple of years ago, really. So, for example, you don't have zip codes in every place. You don't have postal codes in every place. So
right, but also it's called a zip code versus a postal code. And in the US, it's definitely a zip code. And I mean, in the US, there are things like FIPS codes and things as well.
But usually these FIPS codes is really a specification of the census about the other places. So I'm not sure if that's something.
Enough, but it doesn't really belong here. Yeah.
So it is more like an external identifier, really.
Right. It's exactly that.
Yes. Okay. So you're saying external identifier.
It's a unique numerical identifier for some kind of geographic place, county, state, other sorts of things.
Right.
It's not something that sort of is part of a description of that thing. It's just another way of representing the thing.
Okay. So is the name GeoAddress the right name?
And John Fultz is here, by the way.
Okay. Hey, John, I've got some stupid thing to show you. This is running 11.3. And look at this weird thing. Oh, gosh, it's not happening anymore. Huh. Sorry. Okay, so every time I type...
That's why I show up, so I can make all the problems go away by my presence.
Right. Okay, let's try typing it again. Okay, so I type interpreter, open bracket. Oh, there, it happened again. So you see, I type the open bracket, and I get all these errors coming out here.
Okay.
I'm showing you this because to give you the opportunity to tell me something to use to debug it. It looks like it's miscreating. See this try file missing from layout.
Yeah. Oh, and this is in 11.3, you said.
That's what I said. Yes. Okay. Where is that try file?
I am not 100% for certain. It could be in a few different places.
But is it shared between different installations or not?
It depends. If it's in a packlet, not necessarily.
I mean, I would like to say that presumably this try file should be handled with persistent value in some way. That would seem to me to be the most consistent way to handle it.
Well, I mean, I'm not for sure about this particular one, but one possibility is it might be in a packlet with interpreter functionality, which means that it's built as part of the packlets, if that's the case, which I don't know. But I can try to run it down and not further interrupt discussions.
Okay, is it worthwhile to you to be able for me to leave this session running so you can ask me to debug something?
Yes, perhaps, but okay, I don't think I need to further interrupt your meeting, though.
I'll keep this session running.
Okay.
So it's going to be generating garbage somewhere.
Okay. Great.
Poke back in if you know what I should do to further debug it using this session.
Sure.
Okay. Thanks. You can stick around, whatever you're doing. Okay. So with respect to personal name, okay, we know why we need this, and that just needs a parser for the personal name thing, right? Yes? No? I mean, what we need to do is say, interpreter of basically personal name of, whatever it is, professor, doctor, Jane Smith, whatever it is, PhD, right? and that has to turn into something. Am I right?
Yeah, I would expect that.
Okay. So all right. What are we going to discuss with respect to phone number? Are we expecting phone number to evaluate to something which has broken the phone number into pieces, or what are we expecting to have happen?
I would say that yes, it should be broken, and then these things should have methods, and you can extract the various pieces of it, so that it doesn't have to happen in real time every time you try to extract something.
Do all countries have the notion of area codes?
Not necessarily. I was going to comment that, for example, and it might depend on different things. For example, mobile numbers here doesn't have any area code, but landlines have it. So
I see.
And we, in India at least, I think we have like variable length area code.
Yeah.
Also here. Yeah.
In England, they used to have a variable length. I don't know whether it still does.
And phones are also variable length in general.
The phone number.
The actual phone number, yes. And also, for example, we have also here something like the 0800 for free numbers, so that they don't have really an area code. And
well, also there's the issue of the, like the one in the US, it is a pun in a sense that the one that you dial for long distance in the US happens to agree with the country code for the US. See what I'm saying? Like,
right.
In England, you would dial 0 to get, 0865 or something to get that would be like the within the country code, but that would be equivalent to something like, +44-865 ... But in country, that would be 0865, etc., right?
Yeah, I think something that having this broken into parts is something interesting. Could be to have another function to build the number depending on where you are.
Does anything care? I mean, I'm sure all these things like send message and so on deal with that. In other words, the canonical form is the country code plus the country code, blah, blah, blah. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that usually works.
Let me just look at something. What is the phone number?
Well, it depends. For example, when you dial from a landline, you cannot use that form. So you have to use the short form in the place you are. So that works always from a mobile number.
Okay, so for example, there's this thing called lib phone number, which I don't know whether it's some, oh gosh, what is the demo? Okay, so this has, for example, this has the notion of country code and national number. That's a separate issue, which is, this whole can of worms, mapping numbers to carriers. Yeah. Well, look, I think Carlo is the person who's really involved in doing this, and I don't think he's here. So I think we're going to have to talk about this at a different time. And it is not obvious to me whether phone number. So to me, there's two questions. There's what, you enter it in some way. For functions that simply call a phone number, you can feed it the symbolic phone number object. There are obviously accessors that are needed. There's also the question of what it formats like. So, for example, just like a date formats in a particular, if I say now, for example, it'll format in a particular way, one could imagine a silly thing with a little picture of a telephone here that gives the phone number, arguably with some annotation to the country code, if that makes sense. Arguably, if you're not in that country, if your dollar geolocation country does not agree with the, what on earth is happening here? That's really weird. Something's very wrong here. Anybody have any idea what's going on there?
This is a call of geo-identify, I think, the country.
Just worked quickly for me.
Something is very wrong here. Oh my gosh. Well, okay. I mean, there's clearly something wrong with my installation because we've got these other bugs. But
it worked quickly for me as well.
Okay, so Sushma, that's another thing.
To Roger?
Yep.
Okay.
And also copy Jason King, please.
Okay.
Okay, in any case, sorry, you were going to say something, Francisco.
No, I think it's fine to have a nice output for the phone numbers and probably, for example, put in gray the area code or the country code if you are in that area code, and country code, for example, if possible, of course, to identify the area code.
Right. Well, I think the area code is a more of a mess. At least in the US, that's not so useful. But well, except an oldie like me is proud of knowing, area code 213 is Los Angeles or whatever else. And when people give me their phone numbers, it's like, oh, whatever. But it doesn't mean that much anymore because, it all gets scrambled because people get their cell phone at some point in their life that comes from wherever, and then they keep the same number. Okay, but in any case, okay, so what we need to do is continue this with Carlo, talking about the phone number, the thing that does phone number decoding, and I think we've got a path forward. The question of exactly what these subparts are, I think, depends on what the standardized ways that works are. Now, with respect to the personal name stuff, that's interesting. I mean, we that is obviously a complicated area where people, I see there's a bunch. It's interesting. There's a bunch of libraries out there for doing this. I'm sure it doesn't do a perfect job, and I'm sure it depends on the country and so on. And I'm sure there are cases where it's simply ambiguous.
It's not trivial to separate the last name from the first name, for example.
Well, I know in Latin American names, there's a whole, I don't even know what that even means. I mean, presumably each component of the name has a designation, right? I mean, you would call it given name. You would call something, I don't know, if it was in the sort of Soviet style, it would be patronymic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There must be. I know there are characterizations of that. In any case, this is a separate discussion and a separate meeting. But I think this is the direction we're going to go on this. What do we need to decide in this meeting? That we are going to have a phone number wrapper? Yes, we are. What else do we need to discuss here?
Right. So whether we need something else apart from these three, perhaps. And I was wondering about the relation with entities, because that's the two columns we had on the left.
Okay, so I think the answer to that is this has the same relationship to entities as molecule has to chemicals. That is, that, for example, in the case of in the case of phone number, it might be the case that we have, let's say, a company, right, which is an entity.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things it has is a phone number.
Right.
And that's one of these, right? Now, the relationship between a personal name there is a person named Charles Babbage, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
The personal name will merely resolve that that person is named, Charles Ebenezer Babbage or whatever. It will not say which Charles Babbage it is.
But we have also, I think person is not the right thing here necessarily. Also, we have given name as an entity type. So maybe...
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but given name, so I see. So the question is
exactly the
personal name is inside this personal name, are the name components entities or strings?
Yeah, for example, you can have a name that maybe the spelling is not exactly the same, but you can associate that with a given name entity and give so that you can know, you can have nice stats about your name, for example. I don't know.
Well, okay, so that is, I don't know how that works in different, I mean, that is complicated when you're transliterating names, right? Because if you transliterate a name from, I don't know, even Russian, for example, right? There could be multiple transliterations, and we don't have given name entities, I do not believe, for Russian names. Is that a true statement, Alan?
Yeah, I think that's true.
Well, the list has more than 100,000 values, so probably there are some common transliterations, of course, but not with a native way, of course.
Well, yeah, right. But I mean, our given name. So your point is, when you parse a personal name, do you map the components of the personal name into entities, or do you leave them as strings? I think the answer is that there could be a component to the personal name that is called given name entity. But I think that there also wants to be just a pure given name, which is a string. Am I making sense? Because I think that there will be, but first of all, there are clearly given names that aren't entities for us, right? I mean,
sure, I might have a different spelling or whatever. Yep.
Well, different spelling is a weird thing. I mean, transliterations is one issue. But I mean, like for example, I think, like my name, okay, has multiple common spellings, right? So that name is a different name from that name as far as I'm concerned. And okay, so then the issue is, okay, then there's that, right? And okay, so that is an interesting issue. So in other words, if you say, right, so there's the given name, which is on some, passport or whatever, and then there is the nickname, so to speak, which is a different thing. Or the common name. I mean, we've addressed this actually in my people database developed like 20 years ago. I've tried to address this issue, although I have to say it's that aspect of it has definitely fallen into disrepair. See what I'm saying? So in other words, that the person might be referred to as Steve Jobs, for example, even though his legal name was Stephen Jobs. Am I making sense?
Yeah. So, they shouldn't refuse to accept some name, because I mean, somebody could have a name taken from some modern movie that we have never heard of.
I mean, famously, the first name Moon Unit was used at some point, and we are quite certain that Moon Unit is not in the given name entity list. So, yes, I agree, which is why I'm saying there should be a given name as a string, and also if it can be mapped to an entity, then map it to an entity. I think we need a separate meeting about this, because it's going to be all involved with the parsing of personal names, right? And, because the main issue here is, so the big issue is canonicalization.
Right.
And by the way, that might also be an issue for phone numbers as well. Right. I mean, that is something we would want to achieve as canonicalization. because we would want to figure out, in this list of phone numbers, is this the same phone number? I mean, for example, if you're trying to maintain a do not call list, you want to know, oh, well, I actually, that phone number that just came in and said it wanted to be on the do not call list is the same number as whatever. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So I think this needs to branch off into separate meetings. Okay, Sushma? Did you get what you needed out of this meeting?
Yep, I did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we need anyone else apart from Carlo, Alan, Francisco?
I think we should have Chiara, unless she says she shouldn't be there.
Okay.
For the parsing stuff. I think we also need, who knows about the geocoder? Oh, the other people we need, we have obsessively talked about some aspects of this name cracking in the machine learning group.
Okay, yeah.
I don't know, we should get some representative from that.
Okay, yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's move on here.
Okay, so we don't need Francisco and Alan. No.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so the two remaining topics, one is about reviewing documentation of additions in the order functions, and the other one is the discussion about adding keys to arrays.
I want to talk about that one. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So sort by...
Yes, so the second line, that's new. So
function P to compare the results with apply.
Yes. So because now there are three moving pieces there, it's kind of difficult to explain.
Okay, so there's a secondary sort, is basically what you're saying.
Yes. It's the sort of the F of the mapped F is done with P. But we have to stress that the result is still elements of list and not elements of F on list.
I think it's okay. It says that. So according to the ordering function P. Yep, seems okay to me.
Okay, good.
And reverse sort by, I assume, uses the same.
Very similar, yes. So those are the two new functions. And those are still featureized.
Which ones? Reverse sort by and ordering by?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I'm sure this is fine. I mean, if it just corresponds to... Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And ordering by, let's just take a look at that.
Yeah.
Oops, what happened there? Did I mistype it? Ordering. Okay. By the way, what are their CALSOs? Did you knit them at that level?
Yes, we've knitted them. Right, so
okay.
Yes, but not in guide pages. That's the last topic there.
Okay. Okay. So I'm okay with defuturizing these. Shall I do it?
Okay. Yeah.
If I'm doing guide page stuff anyway. Okay. So let's see. We need to consult my strange pet elephant here. Let's see, reverse sort. Wow. It's not a popular function on this. Okay, let's see, where is it discussed? Sort. Where is it? Am I lost it? Sort by. Humph.
So perhaps after sort by?
And where's ordering discussed?
I don't know.
I don't want to have a whole line for this thing.
perhaps then we can have reverse sort and reverse sort by together, and we put them after sort by.
No, let's not do that. I think this isn't the primary place for reverse, is it? No, reverse is under list manipulation. I mean, I have half a mind to put those two under there. Yeah, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay, now ordering by. So let's see, where is ordering? Wow. Claims it's under list manipulation. Let's see where it is there. Let me see. Is it here? Well, for some reason, my system, my machine for finding references has failed me on that particular word. Let's just see here. Let's see, where is that? Permutations. Is it relevant to permutations?
It's an inverse permutation. But ordering by, I don't think it's relevant here.
Okay. So then it's relevant to, where is ordering on this page? Ordering, there we go. Wow. I mean, is ordering by more interesting than ordering? Sort of is.
It's, yeah, it adds a degree of flexibility.
No, but I understand. But is it more useful? Because ordering is not that commonly used. I mean, if I say ordering of A, C, B, D, for example, okay, I get that.
So ordering is used sometimes to say, what's the position of the largest or the position of the smallest?
I never remember to use it for that. How do you use it for that?
So you would say, for example, ordering -1, and that's the position of the largest.
Right.
And now with ordering by, one can say, give me the position of the longest string, for example, if you use string length.
Honestly, that's a really obscure thing. If I saw that in a piece of code, it would just be, I mean, it's just completely obscure. I think I just wrote a thing actually for the function repository, which is it's basically a position largest, basically, which is this.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, honestly, that would be, to me, that's a more useful function. Position largest by. I think I just wrote these for the function repository, as it turns out.
Well, this is equivalent to ordering. I mean, it may be a matter of a name, but ordering has been there for so long.
I understand that. But I mean, ordering does the whole thing, whereas position largest would return just the position, would do this. I mean, this is really obscure, in my opinion. I favor the use of something like ordering a position largest. I think that's a good function for us to have. As I say, I just implemented a version of it for the function repository. But okay, so that the question that you had asked is, where should ordering by be on guide pages?
Right. So we could put it here next to ordering.
Where is ordering even on here?
It was following up.
I don't think it's on this page.
Not here. It was in another page you were looking at. Yeah, this one. So, yeah, because this is referring to positions basically. So there is this set of position related.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not wild about putting it on this page. I think it's oh, for goodness sake. That's an awful lot of not very relevant functions. Humph, where should this go? Look, I really support the idea of this position largest by.
Mm-hmm. So
being a function or in function repository?
I think as built-in functions, because I use them with some frequency.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I happen to implement it for the function repository, but I think it's something that should be promoted. I mean, it takes a bit more effort. Okay, where are we going to put this? What is ordering by related to?
Well, the documentation, for example, mentions sort by, because it's so ordering is to sort what ordering by is to sort by.
Indeed. All right, let's look at the page which is about, which has sort by on it. Hold on. Yeah, Sandra on our live stream is pointing out correctly that ordering does not restructure a list. It simply gives an ordering of that list. I agree.
Well, there is only a part.
Where do we have it? We didn't. No, it isn't on that page, right? So, what is the right place for it? That is a tutorial. That's not relevant at all. Wow. I don't know whether we have a place for this. Where are things like the, oh gosh, what's it called? The indicator function type things that are not, what are they called? I don't have a good solution. Let's ask T-Core Design or see whether you have a suggestion for this. I don't have a good suggestion right now.
Okay.
I want to get on to our last item here.
Mm-hmm.
Key distribute.
Yes. So this is a mixture of three different programs we have discussed before, and the code that you have there in those subsections, you have seen it already.
Okay, so given an array and lists of keys for each level, return a nested association. Right.
So that's a key distribution function. Now we have discussed how to do that or something similar in dataset, so that we pass an array and the keys separately.
By the way, is Chris Carlson now working on dataset?
We had a meeting recently with Tali to learn how to interact with the code, and but Chris is still working on the Wolfram Alpha notebooks.
Okay, we really need to get that going. Okay.
Yeah, we know.
Okay. Okay.
So a possibility here is to do this via dataset, because if we had the notation to add the keys in dataset and then normalize, that would be basically, it's a bit indirect, but
it's very indirect. I mean, this is basically taking an array and labeling things in the array. And we had been calling it key distribute, right? Where the idea is, let's look at your syntax thing here.
So this is a generalization. We discussed this generalization that would be, it's an FG type. Generalization, such that for the case we have here, F would be rule and G would be association.
I see. Where it puts, so it's a map thready like thing.
Right.
Why on earth is it nest thread?
The nesting is due to the fact that it will go deeper and deeper to deeper levels, and the threading is what you said.
Okay, so the issue here is,
so if you evaluate the code section, you can run that.
there's a certain relativistic character to this example. Okay, in any case. And obviously, if it doesn't match the shapes, then there's an issue. But this is what I think it should be doing. I mean, this key distribute of those keys across the array. Yeah, I mean, this is right. That's exactly right. Now, your issue is, your idea here is to be able to have an F and G there.
Right. I mean, we don't want users to use this more general function always, but
no, it's a horrible mess. I mean, okay. And what's the relationship with map indexed? Well, map indexed is feeding in, I see. That's getting pretty obscure here.
I was just trying to find motivation for alternative names.
What's wrong with key distribute?
To me, it's fine. To me, it's fine.
Did somebody have an objection to it?
Well, we have distribute, and the question is whether this is really like distribute, and it's slightly different, but
it's not completely ridiculously wrong for that.
No, I like it. I like it.
Now, what happens if you want at some level to do, if you want to just maintain non to not have to put keys at some level, to maintain it as a list. How do you do that? Do you say automatic at that level? Do you do the following? Do you say key 1, key 2, for that level, blah, 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 comma, automatic, comma, and then, K1, K2, et cetera, at the third level? See what I'm saying?
Yes. Or perhaps it should be none.
Yeah, I think it should be none.
Automatic could be interpreted as use integers.
Yes, I agree. And then you could imagine some other constructors for things there. Now, if you are overfilling with keys, it doesn't object. It will just slice off the keys that it is being. In other words, if I said key distribute alphabet, comma, range of 5,
right?
Range of 4. Okay, so that didn't do the right thing. But I think that should just slice off the first 4 letters of the alphabet.
Right. Yeah.
I think you can over. So in other words, the algorithm is you're taking. In other words, in fact, there's more than just the F and G functions, because what there is the indexor into that first element. Oh, actually, so this case, which I just did, could be argued to be, that's a degenerate case as well, because really it is this, right? Well, it's broken both ways, but both of those should work.
Yes. The code is now expecting to have exactly the proper dimensions. But yes, we can handle all these cases.
Okay.
Or for example, if you don't specify enough levels of keys, it will just go.
It will just stop doing it.
Exactly.
Right. It'll none it, so to speak.
Right.
Okay. So let's just talk for a second about the F and G functions. I feel like the key distribute thing should be in this order. I think it should be keys first, and let's see. I think it should be keys first.
I think so. It's easier to remember, given that it's going to go to associations.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. So keys array. Now, this generalization that you want to do. Do we actually care about this generalization?
Not much. As I said, I have an example there with polynomials and things like that, but it's kind of common. At the end of the previous subsection there. No, a bit down, further down. I think at the end of 3 levels, yeah, like here. Linear combination.
Oh, wow.
So I'm using times and plus for.
No, it's hopeless. It's hopelessly bizarre and complicated, in my opinion.
Okay, we can start with the key distribute.
I think so. Key distribute that.
And I was thinking of having a third argument, which is a level spec, but of course we can also control that by just having the proper length of the first argument.
Yeah, I think it's a better way to do it. And if you want to, burrow down a bunch of levels before you start doing this, then use nuns.
Right.
Okay, I think this is a nice function. I think we should do it.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? I think we're at time here. So thank you all very much. Thanks to folks on the live stream, and talk to you all soon.
Okay. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye.